It's time for you to hear me nonstop talking about my opinions. Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so very excited to have you here. It's time to recap all of the books that I read last month in March. I think that I have been in a book slump as of right now. I started reading one of these books, which I'll tell you whenever we get to it, but I started reading it. I absolutely just felt like it was dragging on. It's not the book's fault, it's totally my fault. But I just was so not in the mood to continue reading it. I didn't want to finish it. I was just so over it at this point that I have since been struggling to pick up any books after that. So it's a tough world out here, right? But I did read some really good books this month. I think I gave overall pretty high ratings to most of these books. So I'm actually going to deep dive into my thoughts and opinions on all of them. So this book is the third book. I think it's sectioned out to have like another two books, I want to say. I'm not positive, but that's what I've seen, which is really exciting. I honestly don't know where they can go from here. I guess it really doesn't matter. They can go anywhere that they want to. I've literally not expected anything that has happened in any of the books. It's so fun. It's so different. It's obviously fantasy, so they can do whatever they want. It's unique, and it's just really enjoyable. I love this series. I don't think that there's a bad book in the bunch. I definitely think that the second one is my favorite out of all three of them, but I do think that they all get a 5 stars for me, including this book. I absolutely loved it. I have been waiting for this book to come out for so long, and it finally came out, and it definitely did not disappoint. Then, secondly, I read In 5 Years. I really thought that this book was going to be a 5 stars for me. I don't necessarily know exactly why. I just thought that the premise of this was so unique. So maybe not unique. To me, it was unique. When she was in the future, travel back, I don't know, whatever the case was, whenever she actually hit that like time travel type thing or her imagination of whatever the future is going to look like, I was hooked. I was like, this is going to be so good. And then whenever I found out like kind of the what would it be, the tea, not tea, but like the drama between the future that she saw versus what was playing out in real time, I definitely was on the edge of my seat to figure out like what was going to happen. I didn't want her to end up betraying people, but I was like, well, if that's like the future, that's what it's supposed to be. If this is going to be like this great romantic love story, I'm excited for it. I want to see how that's going to happen. Obviously, in the manner of which that was going to happen was probably not going to end well for somebody in the book, but at the end of the day, I was very curious. I wanted to know what happened, but it definitely took a weird turn, and I feel like if you've read this book, you probably will know what I'm talking about. It was very confusing. I didn't really understand why. It just felt so off topic. It didn't feel like it was necessarily a part of the story. You know what I mean? Let me actually see what the back of this says so I can actually talk about maybe more, hopefully. Okay, yeah, so I really can't say much about this, to be honest. But hey, it says that it's an unforgettable love story and not the one that you're expecting, which is 100% accurate. You expect her to fall in love with this guy that she has woken up with in the 5 years span, and that's what you were looking forward to. At least for me, that's what I was looking forward to this entire book. And then once it kind of, I don't know, shifted, once it kind of shifted in the direction that they were going to, I was curious how it was going to line up. I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like, how are they going to, be into each other and stuff? We're as far away as you could possibly get to them being into each other. I don't remember how this ended, to be honest. I just know that I was thoroughly disappointed when it ended. Therefore, I gave it a 3 stars. Again, I totally thought that this could be a 5 star. This had 5-star potential in the beginning, but probably halfway through, it lost me. Not necessarily in a confusing way, it just fell off, and I wasn't necessarily excited to see what happened because we were too focused on this one big detail that kind of dropped that we weren't expecting, and less of the actual In 5 Years part, which was kind of disappointing. But I did think that this cover was so cute. It looks really good. It looks like it would be a fabulous book. It started off fabulous, but just dropped off at the end for me, unfortunately. I was really hoping that I would love this, but I didn't. This was another one of my honorable mentions for for February. I didn't finish this one in February, but I did finish it very beginning of March, so not bad. Can't complain that much. All right, now moving out of my honorable mentions, these are all books that I specifically read in the month of March. I read The Perfect Marriage. I, again, was expecting to love this one. I thought that the concept of it was really good. I mean, who wouldn't be excited to hear that this lady's husband had a mistress and he ends up being accused of her murder? I thought that the concept was so fabulous, but it just, something in this book really didn't hit for me. I don't know what it was. I just thought that it was very predictable, in my opinion. Obviously, like, the very, very last plot twist didn't really hit me at any previous point in the book. I was not expecting that, but the overall major plot twist of the book, I definitely expected. I was not very blown away by it. There were other little details that they dropped kind of after the fact that the big plot twist happened that I also was expecting, so there was really only just one part of this book that I kind of didn't really expect. But it also was very out of left field. I don't think that the ending of this was that believable, and I'm talking about, like, the end, like, what happens at the very end, kind of like the epilogue part of it. I don't think that that was very believable, and it just was weird to me. I didn't love that. I think that the concept of this book was really great. I thought that, you know, there was so much potential for this, but it just wasn't great, I guess. I don't know. I was definitely expecting a lot more. I thought that the dual point of view was kind of interesting, so I was really trying to figure out if we were dealing with, like, an unreliable narrator, if somebody that had a point of view in this book was telling the truth, or if they were lying. I didn't really know what was going on. We're trying to figure out if we believe that Adam actually killed his mistress or not. So I was trying to figure out if Adam was unreliable, if he actually did it, because in the book, like, he would say he didn't. But I'm trying to figure out, like, did he actually do it? Like, what's gonna happen with this? So I don't think it was bad by any means. It definitely let me down. I think it was good for the most part, but it definitely isn't anything that I would recommend. I think that there are so many better thrillers out there. I think that, honestly, The Silent Patient was, like, a lot better than this one. That one, it didn't trip me up. I was expecting it, but at the end of the day, it was so much more enjoyable to find out that what I was expecting was correct. This one, even though I knew what was happening and they were like, oh yeah, you're right, essentially, I didn't really care. It wasn't fascinating enough for me to continue reading it to find out if I was right. You know what I mean? Sometimes whenever you guess a book ending, you can still enjoy reading the story. This one, after I kind of guessed what was going to happen, I didn't really care for continuing reading it that much, just because finding out wasn't that interesting. I didn't care for this one that much. I ended up giving this one a 3-star. I would definitely throw this underneath The Silent Patient. I think A Silent Patient is like a high 3-star, and I honestly sometimes debate if I got that rating wrong or not, because sometimes I'm like, I feel like it's more of a 4-star to me, but I would say a high 3, and then this one's definitely on the lower 3 spectrum. I really wanted to like this, but unfortunately I just didn't care for it a ton. Then the next 3 books I got into, you will see in a book video from me here shortly, but I started Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I absolutely adored this book. I thought it was so much fun. From the beginning, I absolutely loved the 2 love interest characters. I thought that their sarcasm and wit together was just so fun. I loved every time that they were communicating, even though they were kind of like enemies to lovers type thing. Obviously, they weren't really enemies, but like had workplace drama, essentially. They just didn't care for each other that much, and then them coming together and becoming friendly, talking to each other, stuff like that, even though they were still kind of hating on each other and they were trying to be arch nemesis to each other, I thought that the banter between them in that realm of, I still don't really like you, I still don't care for you, but I'm kind of coming around to you without me really acknowledging that or being aware of it, I thought that that was really fun, and I did really enjoy that. I think this one, though, it kind of was a really good slow burn. I enjoyed the anticipation and them kind of flirting back and forth from each other but not acting on it. I loved that. But I think like towards halfway through the book, they kind of acted on it and then continued to act on it and then built a relationship from there, which I don't necessarily love. Sue me. I'm sorry. I prefer a slow burn to the end. I wanted just this banter the entire time, but kind of once they formed a relationship, I guess, it wasn't necessarily as fun, flirty like it was, and it was more serious, romantic communication, feelings, like all the stuff that you would expect from a genuine relationship, and not just somebody trying to get to know each other. That's the only thing that I didn't care about. Once the relationship hit, I kind of was over the book. I didn't really care that much, and that's normally how I am with any book, so it's not like this one in specific. Once they got together, once they were into each other, and once they were actually working on those really intense, deep problems, I was kind of over it. I didn't really care. I didn't really want to read the rest of it, but that's just how I am. That's just how I am. If that's not how you are, then this one's going to be an absolute great book for you, I would assume. I don't know you personally, but I would assume. But I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was so much fun. Again, I wish that they had drug the romance out a lot farther into the book. I wish that maybe they didn't get together until like this much through the book. But unfortunately, that's not the way it worked, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. Then right after that, I jumped into People We Meet on Vacation. I thought that the premise of this book, I liked it a little bit more than Book Lovers. I enjoyed the friends to lovers kind of thing. I guess it was more second chance friends to lovers. They kind of had a falling out. Then they came back together to go on like a final vacation to restore their friendship. And it basically was just 2 friends going and hanging out on this vacation that literally everything under the sun that could go wrong went wrong. And they're basically trying to rekindle their friendship that they had kind of dismembered. They kind of like fizzled out previously. And I don't think that they really tell you why until like towards the end of the book, so I'm not going to say anything about it. This one I listened to mostly on audiobook, so unfortunately for me, I did get thoroughly confused for a while. I think I'm not going to blame my audiobook, but like I genuinely think it was my audiobook's problem. In the book, the chapters say like this summer and then however many summers ago, whenever they're talking about like previous summers that the 2 main characters had went on. That's basically their thing. They go on little vacation trips every summer. So whenever I was listening to this, I was unaware completely to the fact that there was a past tense in the book and a present tense. So it was mainly like every other chapter they would kind of go back and forth. I was not following along with that. I was unaware of that 100%. I don't think that I fully picked up on everything as good as I could have because I wasn't keen in on the fact that there was a past and a present. But even though I didn't quite grasp that, I still really enjoyed the book. This one was a lot more of a slow burn. They didn't like start talking about feelings or anything like that until farther on in the book, which I did really enjoy. I think that's something that I like a lot more. The only thing, this one also, the main girl was a little bit quirky. She kind of had some sass to her. But the main male character, he was a lot more anxious, reserved, laid back, stuff like that. So it was mainly her kind of engaging in the conversation, and he was just like, okay, yeah, like, sure, whatever you want to do. And the funny parts and stuff was mainly just her talking. Ooh. Which, that's something that I was missing based on coming straight out of Book Lovers, because that one, the 2 main characters had such a good dynamic and such good conversation between themselves. I actually was laughing out loud at some of the things that they were talking about in Book Lovers. But this one, I did laugh out loud a little bit, but it wasn't quite the same. But I think overall, I did enjoy the whole aspect of this book a lot more than I did Book Lovers. But still, nonetheless, I did really enjoy this one. I also gave this one 4 stars. It was good. It was great. Fantastic. Loved it. Now, I'm sure that you can see where I'm going with this, but after People We Meet on Vacation, I then picked up Beach Read. This one was the book that ended up putting me in a little bit of a book slump. I'm sorry. I know that I'm going to offend the entire population by me saying that. I'm not saying that this was a bad book. I don't know what was going on with me. I think it was genuinely just the fact that I had read 2 Emily Henry books previously. Not saying that I didn't like them by any means. It's not what I'm getting at. But the writing was very similar, obviously. I loved the writing. I loved how funny and kind of corny everything was. That's something I did really enjoy. But I had an issue with all 3 of these books having main characters having like some sort of extremely traumatic past. And that's something that they carried on in their current life. And I've talked about this in the video that you will see of these books. I'm not saying that people can't experience trauma. I'm not saying that people can't lose their parents and still have issues with that. They can't fully do this or that based on their past traumas, their past experiences, the whole 9. It's a little much for me, and that was something that at this point, once I got to this book, I kind of was a little bit turned off by it. I wasn't necessarily into it that much. With the first one, I was like, okay, like, whatever, fine. Learning something that I never thought about. Second book kind of had it again, and I was like, okay, like, we kind of just talked about this, but, like, it's not that big of a deal. Third book, they kind of had it again, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of over this. I'm done. I don't really want to talk about this aspect anymore because it's just been 3 back-to-back-to-back consecutive books where they've kind of had the same underlying theme at the end of the day. And it just, got a little repetitive for me. So I definitely kind of got tired of reading that by the time I got to this book. I, again, loved this one as well. I loved the main characters. I thought that they were so fun together. I liked the premise of the book. Also, I thought kind of them writing in each other's writing genres and stuff was very interesting. I did think going into it, I think I knew that they were going to be like writing for each other. I thought that they were going to be specifically writing a book for each other, and then whoever could get it published was going to be like the winner. That's not really how that went. They were kind of just writing in each other's genres and then trying to get it published, I think. By the time I got to them actually deciding on that, I just kind of started reading one chapter a night, kind of forgetting what I read the next morning, and then I just stopped caring because I stopped comprehending as much of what I was reading. That's totally not the book's fault. Again, it was mainly my fault, but the research and stuff, I didn't quite get what was going on. I wasn't focusing on that. So by the time we got to it, and I was like, okay, well, why are they doing this again? Like, what's the actual purpose of this? I was kind of drawing a blank. So that got a little frustrating for me, and then once I didn't really understand that, and then that's mainly what was going on, I kind of found it hard to continue reading. Obviously, again, I'm not saying that's the book's fault. It's totally my fault. I'm aware. And I know that a lot of people will be so upset at me by saying that I didn't care for it, like, at a certain point. I kind of stopped paying attention to it. Sorry, I know I'm gonna hurt your feelings. That's just genuinely how I felt reading this. At the end of the day, I still really enjoyed this book. Also, I gave this one a 4 stars as well. I just think that this might be my least favorite of the 3. I think if I were to go back and reread it, I would enjoy this a lot more, but I would definitely have to do it a lot later on, maybe in the right setting, maybe on a beach or something like that. For the most part, I thought they were all pretty good, and I really enjoyed them. So I definitely will be reading more Emily Henry books at some point, maybe just a little bit farther down the road, so that way I can digest the full don't have a parent anymore, my parent died, whatever, all that. So after that, like I said, I was kind of in a book slump. I didn't really know what I wanted to read. I was very much struggling, but this book was calling my name on my bookshelf, and that was Anxious People. I literally just got this book not too long ago, and I had been looking at it on my shelf, and I was like, I feel like I really want to go ahead and read this. Didn't know why, didn't know anything about it, haven't read the back of the book, but I've heard a lot of people say good things about it, not that I really ever heard anybody genuinely talk about it. So I figured I would give it a shot. I was very nervous because I'm pretty sure this is like a literal, it's a literal book. I thought that this was going to be a literary fiction book. I believe that that's actually what it's classified as. And I've also heard people say that it's like a character study. Not quite sure, don't even actually know what that means for myself. But that's just what I've heard. So going into this, I was kind of nervous. I definitely wanted something different than a romance. I was kind of tired of the Emily Henry books at this point. Sorry, I hate to say that. But then going into this one, I was definitely very eager to get something that was not romance. I don't think that this one had any romance in it at all. So that's kind of why I wanted to pick this one up. I was over that. I was done with it. But I wasn't quite ready for a thriller book. I wanted to read a thriller book, but I couldn't find a good one. I couldn't think of any one that I actually wanted to read. And this one was just staring me down on my bookshelf. So I felt like I had to read this one before I read the other ones. This book was so incredibly fascinating. First of all, let me tell you, I'm not big on writing. I don't really pick up on writing oftentimes. I noticed the Emily Henry writing because it made me laugh, genuinely. I thought that the characters were so fun together, and I enjoyed the way that they spoke amongst each other. So that was really exciting. I loved her writing for that. I loved her dialogue that she wrote. But this one was just, the whole writing was just beautiful. I loved reading this. Felt like the narrator was like trying to speak to me like through the book. I didn't even know how to explain it. It was just so good. So in this book, we're kind of following this bank robber, and they kind of explain it as the bank robber has a bunch of personal issues that they're going through right now. I'm not going to talk about what they are because just reading it was so frustrating to me, and it really just brought out a lot of emotions for the bank robber. So I think that that's important to actually sit there and read it yourself. But we're following the bank robber. Again, they have a lot of personal issues, a lot of issues going on in their family right now, and they decide that because of all this, they need money for rent and decide that they want to rob a bank. Which is very interesting, but the plan is to rob the bank and give the money back once, the bank robber's able to. It's very interesting, and there's a lot of underlying themes that you pick up later on in this book that you probably never would have even thought about. And then, this book is not about the bank robber, and the narrator actually tells you, they break the fourth wall to tell you that it's not actually about a bank robber. and it's a lot deeper than that. And all of these people end up having this interconnection they have no idea that they have based on the underlying themes of this book that have nothing to do with the bank robber. So it definitely was something that was so different. And I don't want to say out of my comfort zone. I think mentally it was out of my comfort zone. But in general, this book was so good. I absolutely loved it. I thought that the writing, again, was fantastic. It was so different, and it very much felt like I was kind of friends with the person reading this book, and I'm reading kind of what happened, and they're kind of cluing me in on different little tidbits of information that I might not have picked up on myself. And it was just so good. The characters were supposed to be unlikable, I believe, and they were unlikable, but I kind of enjoyed it because once you figure out like what happens at the end, you look back at the characters and you're like, oh wow, like that's kind of cool, actually. Them being unlikable is very much intentional to the story. I struggled with rating this because I am very finicky with giving 5 stars, and I have not given a book 5 stars at all this year, but I think that this one is going to be my first. I adored this book. I loved it. I had to talk to Nick about it, which is definitely a very good sign that it is a 5-star book, and I just loved it. I absolutely love this. So now I have to read like literally every other book by him. Very excited. I have the man called, is it Ove? I don't know. Everybody pronounces it Ove, but to me it just looks like Ove. So I guess it's because they're in like Sweden or something like that, I'm pretty sure. But I have to read all the other books. I just have to. Also, this one is a series on Netflix, but it is a like Swedish production, and I'm gonna be so honest, I was excited to look at it, but it looks so bad. It literally looks so terrible. I almost don't even want to watch it. So we'll see if I watch that, but this one was my first 5 stars of the year. Absolutely so great. I cannot express how much I love this book. I will probably recommend it to literally anybody, even if they have no interest in it whatsoever. Then the last book that I read was Teacher by Frida McFadden. This one was for my Kindle Mystery Challenge. I basically just needed to pick another book, read it for a couple days, and then that was it. I ended up finishing this book in a couple days. I thought that this one was very unique, actually. I don't love the themes that it had. Again, I talked about this in that last video. Literally just finished filming that part. It definitely was very weird and uncomfortable for me. So basically followed this girl, I don't remember her name. I think her dad dies, something like that. And she ends up going to school and she struggles in math. The math teacher really feels for her. He feels bad that her dad just died. He's trying to help her out by tutoring her a lot in math. He's staying after to help her. She is not very wealthy, so she has to ride a bike to school. He gives her rides home because it's raining, stuff like that. He kind of has her and her mom come over to his house with his wife to have supper, the whole 9. So he's really trying to put an effort into helping this girl. She repays him by stalking him at his house. And I think that the cops end up getting called, something like that. And the teacher has to resign because she is stalking him, and there's too many allegations that they had a relationship of some sort, even though both of them had said, no, this didn't happen, there was no evidence of anything like that. But because of the parents' concerns for their kids that are going to be in his class the next year, he ends up having to quit because he doesn't want to deal with the whole, So she goes back to school, she's getting bullied, nobody likes her, nobody wants to talk to her, and the only person that has showed her any kind of kindness, sympathy, friendship, whatnot, is her English teacher, and they kind of follow along in the same type of relationship that she had with the former teacher, so she's kind of just repeating the cycle. Now obviously it's so much more than just that, but that's kind of like the main point of it, I guess. This book was so frustrating because I'm not like a big teacher-student relationship type of gal. I think that that's so inappropriate, like wildly inappropriate. Also, I kind of had a difficult time with the fact that he was her teacher and she was 16 and he was like almost 40. I think they did express in the book that they lived in one of the states where the age of consent is 16, so she was legally an adult, and legally it wasn't incorrect for them to have a relationship other than the fact that he was her teacher. That was like the only gray line that they faced at that point. But still, nonetheless, to me, where I live, it's 18. 18's the cap that you're an adult, you can consent. Other than that, you are too young, you're a child, essentially, and that's a big no-no. So for me, that's totally illegal. It's like out of the park, not correct. But for them, they legalized it, which I assume that they would at the point that we find out their ages and stuff. And then later on they kind of say, oh yeah, well, it's legal in my state, like I'm not gonna be able to get in trouble for it. So that was kind of irritating. I did expect that though. It still was very odd, and I know that there are some people that would probably be triggered by that, so just definitely check your trigger warnings on that. That's definitely kind of an issue, underage relationship with teacher. So be wary of that. But nonetheless, I thought this one was pretty good. I think the last book that I read by Frida McFadden was Never Lie. That one I ended up giving a 4-star. I really enjoyed that one. That was definitely the best book by her that I had read, and that was the most plot twisty. I wasn't necessarily expecting it. So this one I also thought was pretty good, so I ended up giving this one a 4-star as well. I'm kind of struggling with that rating, not gonna lie. I don't know if I really think that it is a 4-star, or it's just because I read it recently and it's a thriller book and it was pretty good. But it was still good. I liked it. So I think I'll keep it at a 4-star. Again, if I want to change the rating later on, I'll make a video at the end of the year doing my official rating changes like I did last year, and I'll be able to go through all of them and let you know my updated thoughts and opinions on all of them. But as of right now, I do think that I'm going to stick with it and just keep it as a 4, because it definitely was pretty good. I definitely liked it. Now we move into my honorable mentions for the month of March. These are all the books, again, that I have started this month, but I have not finished them, so I will be finishing them in April, if that. At some point, I do plan on finishing these books. The first one I started was Trust. I started this one, Nick was riding dirt bikes, and I could not for the life of me comprehend this book. I couldn't get into it. I couldn't follow along with what was being said. For some reason, I decided that the dirt bike noises were more important to just hone in on my head than listening to my own self thinking about the words of this book. So I don't know what happened with that. It was kind of frustrating, to be honest, but I ended up struggling with this one a little bit, so I put this one down. So I started this one yesterday or the day before, so it's not like I really got anywhere. I think I'm like 20 pages into this book. I don't know if I'm going to pick this up and continue this in April. I'm not quite sure. I think I might try to reread the first 20 pages that I left off at, and then if I don't find it interesting at that point, I might just try it again at a later date. But as of right now, I started this one, I'm 20 pages in, and I did not finish this one. So this is my first honorable mention for this month. Then secondly, I said that I started reading The Teacher by Frida McFadden for my Kindle Mystery Challenge. I read that in 2 days, so I had 3 total days that I had to read for. I read The Teacher for 2 days, and then I started The Coworker for my 3rd and final day of reading in that challenge. I'm 70 pages into this one, I believe. So far, I'm enjoying it. I started again this one while I was at the dirt bike place. I put this one down after 20 pages and then picked this one up. And again, same problem. I could not get into it because I was too busy focusing on the noises of the dirt bike exhaust. Why was I doing that? Couldn't tell you. Have no idea. But I was. And I wasn't really engaging in this story. But I don't think that the parts that I wasn't quite grasping, I don't think that that's like hindering my ability to enjoy this book. I got a little bit farther after the fact and just kind of sit in peace and quiet and read the book. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen. As of right now, I don't think this book as fascinating as The Teacher was whenever I first started it. But I do think that this one has a different kind of theme. We're following this lady named Dawn. She never showed up for her shift, and her coworker Natalie is very worried about her. She has no idea what happened to her. She's really concerned because she's not there on time when she's normally extremely punctual. She answers Dawn's phone and hears somebody on the other line really concerningly asking for help and then hanging up. And she's really worried. She's trying to figure out what happened to her coworker, but none of the other people in the office really care. They don't think that it's that big of a deal because she's late one time in her life. Like, you know, it's not that big of a deal. I will hopefully get this one finished by the end of the month. I think that my Kindle challenge, again, that one started today as well, and I think that I have to finish a book for that, so I might just finish this one for that challenge, and that'll be my probably first read of the month. So we'll see about that, but yeah, these are all the books that I ended up reading last month in March. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you thought. Of course, let me know what you thought of this one, because now I'm really curious. I want to know what everybody has to say, because I absolutely adored it. But of course, any of the other ones, let me know what your thoughts were, your opinions. Let me know if you agreed with me, disagreed with me, kind of whatever. Let me know what books you think I need to read next month. And yeah, anything. Just tell me anything. I'm all ears. But thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and I hopefully will get to see you in the next one. See ya.